I'd love to begin this video with a passage that has really been circling my mind for the last, honestly, few months. But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore said unto him, We have seen the Lord. But he said unto them, Except I shall see his hands, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe. And after 8 days again, his disciples were within, and Thomas with them. Then came Jesus, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst, and said, Peace be unto you. Then saith he to Thomas, Reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands, and reach hither thy hand, and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless, but believing. And Thomas answered, and said unto him, My Lord, and my God. Jesus saith unto him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen, and yet have believed. The story of doubting Thomas has become one of my personal favorites in the Bible, because the insight of the story, I think, says much more than just the surface level of the passage. It's astounding to me that the people who compiled it had the foresight to understand just how much a part of life doubt really is, so much so that they wouldn't publish the Bible, they wouldn't pass around the Bible without this story. If I'm being honest, and I think that's the only way to really start something like this is the story that helped me find my way back to Christianity after many years of, I wouldn't say abandoning the faith, I never fully let go, but certainly not practicing. It wasn't a sermon, it wasn't a miracle, it wasn't the mythology, it wasn't even a verse I had really noticed before in probably 12 years of Catholic school. And I think the reason it's really become a big story for me is I think we tend to look at Thomas with the benefit of hindsight, with the safety of our belief, and with the assumption that, of course, Christ has returned. How could anyone not believe that? And so it becomes easy to scoff and easy to say, how dare Thomas not believe? But the truth is, I think most of us are more like Thomas than we care to admit. I often wonder if Christ returned today, if and when, how hard a time would he have convincing the world he was real? Especially now with the age of AI and misinformation and deep fakes of, endless noise. Would we as people recognize him? Would we believe him? Or would we see him just sort of as this crazy person? Would we believe our own eyes, or would we, quite literally scroll past whatever areas of TikTok were showing him? But when I look at Thomas, when I think of Thomas, I don't see just a doubter. I know his name is Thomas the Doubter, but that's not necessarily what I personally see. I'm seeing, at least now, I'm seeing someone honest. I'm seeing someone brave enough to say aloud what I can only imagine a majority of people at the time were thinking. And in that honesty, I really find myself. I find my story. Because my life has really been full of doubt. Doubt in my career, especially my career. Doubt in my marriage. Doubt in whether I'm a good son, a good brother, a good Christian. Doubt if I'm a good person at all. I catch myself wondering, was I too rude to that server? Did I make someone feel small and not realize it? And more often than not, if I'm being truthful, I land on no. No, I wasn't enough. No, I didn't show up the correct way. I didn't love well enough. I'm not trying hard enough. And that kind of doubt, that creeps into the corners of every day can really start to consume you. For me, as someone who grew up in a Catholic school tradition, that education really taught me and drilled into me that every moment of doubt could send you into an eternal fire. I can picture me at 8 years old with a nun glowering over me, looking for any excuse to hit my hands because I couldn't recite a passage correctly. And you kind of learn that even questioning is something that separates you from God. That doubt is a weakness, it's a failure, and above all, it's dangerous. But now at my age, I'm 33, I think, what if it's not? As a person who's lived a life full of doubt, I think, what if it's not? What if doubt is actually part of this process? What if it's something sacred? Something that God not only allows, but uses, encourages. We encounter doubt every single day in big decisions and small decisions. And I believe more and more that Scripture doesn't just tolerate doubt, but it actually speaks to it. It welcomes it. There's an entire story in the Gospels dedicated to this experience, and not just in Christianity. Nearly every major faith tradition understands the role of doubt. You can look it up. The internal wrestling, the questioning, the longing to believe, but needing something to hold on to. It is an experience that every faith understands people are going to go through, and I question, why have we made this something bad? Why can't this be a tool for us? Doubt isn't just something that happens to us. It's part of what it means to be human, to doubt ourselves, to doubt our place in the world. And honestly, I think it's really important to doubt even God. And that brings me something that we don't often talk about, but Christ himself doubted so much he fell into agony. We don't like to use that word that Christ doubted. It makes us uncomfortable. But if you sit in the scene in the Garden of Gethsemane, really sit with it, you'll see what I mean. There's no bravado, no righteous speeches, just Jesus alone in the dark, asking his Father if there's any way out. If it is possible, let this cup pass from me. I sometimes like to imagine the conversation Jesus would have had with the apostles before his arrest. They're terrified. They're begging him not to go through with it. Why are you doing this? What could possibly be done for this? And I imagine Jesus just exhausted and full of sorrow, whispering the most human words. He says, "We have not the mind of the Father." Or more simply put, I don't know. He didn't have all the answers. He walked into death with tears in his eyes, his confusion in his spirit, and with love still somehow burning in his chest. And that's where we can learn how to deal with doubt. As I said before, I'm 33 years old. I'm the same age Christ was when he died for us. And I'll be honest with you, I think if my dad were planning my own crucifixion, I would not go quietly. I'd scream and I'd rage and I'd demand a better ending, especially for my father. But Christ walked into it with a heavy heart and trembling faith, but it should be noted, full of doubt. And so you ask yourself, is this doubt weakness? Is it bad? Or is it his strength? You respect more the person who says, I don't know, rather than the person who creates an answer because they need to seem like they know everything. I think we all know those kinds of people. And so when Christ appears to Thomas, he doesn't chastise him. He doesn't say, you should have known better. He doesn't call him weak, or he doesn't act like he's lesser or sinful. He says, come. He says, see me, touch the wounds. I want you to believe. It's an invitation. It's not a punishment. And to me, that's one of the most beautiful moments, because Christ, having lived and suffered and doubted, meets Thomas exactly where he is. It's one of the first moments in the Bible where the humanity of Christ, we see it really paying off. It's not in judgment, it's in understanding. In fact, it's the first moment where we see the benefits of Christ's suffering, of his journey, because we have seen that all was well. He understands that it was actually his doubt that brought him agony, not necessarily the circumstance. I'm sure crucifixion is obviously its own type of agony. And so in that, I think something shifts, something changes. This isn't the God of thunder and smoke from the Old Testament. This isn't the voice on the mountain. This is a God who enters the room a bit more quietly and says, I know you're afraid, but let me show you it's real. And then Thomas believes. But to be honest, I don't think his doubt disappears. I think it transforms. I think he carries it with him like we all do, but now it becomes part of his faith. It's not a threat to it. And I think for that reason, we need to analyze the role of doubt, not just in our faith, but in our lives. There's a saying, seeing is believing. But Christ, he flips it. He said, blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. And that line used to bother me as a kid because it honestly, it felt like a trick. It felt like a kind of religious guilt trip, which an excuse to chastise those who doubt. But now I'm beginning to hear it differently. I hear it as a whisper to the ones who don't have the answers, and to the ones still waiting for the answers, the ones trying to believe in their calling, in their relationships, in their future, in their career, in their fatherhood, in their motherhood, and in themselves. Because that's what it comes down to, I think. Faith isn't just about believing in God. It's about believing that you are someone God can use. That the tools he's given you, your mind, your talents, your capacity for love, they are enough. But in order to get there, you must pass through doubt. You have to walk through the fire of, I'm not sure. Otherwise, you'll never have faith in yourself, and you'll never pull yourself and raise yourself to the level you need to be. So I think we have to wrestle with the question, am I really who God says I am? But this is a journey we must take. It's intended for us to take. We must carry our own cross, knowing that salvation lies on the other side, even when we can't see it. And it's in this journey that we begin to see the fruits of our belief. Think about when you accomplish something you didn't know you could do, you weren't sure. Trust builds. You begin to believe, not in the perfection, not in the certainty, but in the quiet, stubborn truth that you are capable, that you are enough. And the next time it gets a little easier and that doubt creeps away and you become confident. So that's why I'm starting to see doubt not just as a problem to be solved or a test that God has that we have to pass, but I'm actually seeing it as one of God's greatest gifts to us. Because doubt is actually what opens the door. Doubt is what drives the questions. Doubt is what leads us to seek and what allows us eventually to believe, not just in our faith, but in ourselves and in our abilities and our potential to get closer to God in all things. And truly, I'm beginning to think that it's only with doubt that faith becomes real. Doubt is God's opportunity, and through it, He's given us the most powerful tool we have to grow, to trust, and to live the life He intended.